I got all I want, and I got all I need, and I got everything. I got you and me. All I want, I got all I need.
All right, here we go. All right, here we go. I downloaded these free music tracks that you can put behind your words. And I don't really use them all that much. But when I do decide to use them, everyone feels so much more comforted. Aren't computers great? Isn't AI just fantastic? You hear a lot of conversations about AI coming through the pike these days. You've got all sorts of different companies investing in data centers and developing different forms of AI, different use cases for it. You see it being used in the military purposes. You see it used in, obviously in the searching kind of the vanilla aspect of it. You see people, really, really intelligent people putting their information in, like their information about whether it be their finances or other things, and kind of getting a secondary perspective. And it was really interesting because there was a recent Joe Rogan episode with Mark Andreessen, and he was talking all about how AI answers him better than, most professionals might in their fields, and gives him a more well-rounded perspective on the thing that he's searching out. And he's kind of an early, maybe not founder, but he has thought through the AI, his relationship with AI, use of AI. And I think he had something to do with kind of the early development of AI that kind of leads him credence for speaking on the topic. But to hear him kind of work through the different uses that he's seeing in that space, and the hope that he has as a result of the way that he uses it, the way that he sees other people using it, and where he thinks it's going to take us. Obviously, there's a lot of people afraid of AI, afraid for jobs, afraid for the impact on human relationships, the impact on, the military or other places that it might get used. So I've been thinking about AI quite a bit, mostly in the sphere of marriage and relationships. And we are currently seeing some AI companions come out as as ads for those kinds of things come out. I recently saw AI companion ads on YouTube as recent as today. And it's interesting to see marketing come out for an AI companion relationship, a more intimate version of AI. And so me and my faithful Chad GBD, we looked at the Steelman arguments for AI companions, both on the positive and the negative. And that's actually something that I took from Mark Andreessen's episode with Joe Rogan, which was he asks the AI to give him a Steelman, which is it's a term from like logic, and it basically just means, or argumentation maybe, but it basically just means the Steelman is the strongest form of argument for any given side. And so I asked him to Steelman, or create the strongest argument for both sides, both the positive AI companion side and the negative. And then you can kind of think, like it'll give you different ideas and present the data in a pretty compelling way on both sides. And then as a human being, you get to just sit back and think about how you feel about what it said. Where is the stretching going on? Where is there assumptions being made? Do you believe either of the arguments? Kind of like almost like listening to a debate on any given topic. I went into the exploration of this idea with a very negative lens, and I wouldn't necessarily have been able to articulate why I think that AI companions are a destructive force in people's relationships, and even just having the option to access AI companionship type relationships. Not necessarily doing searches and looking at arguments and asking, even asking advice here and there is, in my mind, beneficial. I think that a lot of people get a lot out of the learning that they're doing in AI. Although there is something to be said with the quality of learning that you get from having constant access to all the information that you do with a chatbot AI search. How robust that learning is, how long it will last, how it will be applied or misapplied in our context in relationships. I've asked it quite a few different marriage related questions over the course of the podcast, and a lot of the answers are fine. They are not, but they don't hold a lot of substance. And maybe that's to be expected with something that's so early on, but just maybe coming from this AI perspective and it spitting out the data at you just doesn't really capture a lot of the things that you can capture in counseling or in human relationships. So a lot of the argumentation that it gave for the AI companion being a positive thing or being something that could long-term benefit. And no, it is not lost on me that I used AI to do research on this topic. So one of the comments that it made is that the core, I'm quoting here, the core argument is that they don't replace human relationships, they stabilize and extend your capacity for them. So AI companions are good because they stabilize and extend your capacity for human relationships. So this is the core of the argument as laid out by by my AI. And I think right off the bat, you can kind of feel or see a lot of holes in this argument that AI is going to stabilize people. We already are seeing a lot of people destabilized by AI. And you could look on the other side and say, well, for how many people is it destabilizing for our how do you say that? What percentage of people are being destabilized versus what people are being stabilized, right? We could never measure the number of people that are stabilized. So we have to kind of leap a little bit. And we have to leap into this idea of if AI is participating in conversation and connecting with humans, and they are kind of feeding whatever they're hearing, really the AI becomes a reflection of the person, not necessarily a reflection of a real relationship. And when you have someone encouraging you, maybe in your kind of weaker, more vulnerable areas or beliefs, you often find very destructive patterns that come out of feeding kind of the worst version or the most vulnerable version of someone's life, especially in like heat of the moment, really dark, hard moments. They're very vulnerable. And if an AI companion or even an AI chat is encouraging them along those lines of like where they're most vulnerable, I could see that becoming an incredibly destructive force. And I think we have some examples of it doing just that, causing suicides, encouraging people, workarounds for, making destructive or violent things. We've seen AI do a lot of those things. And so the idea that the companions are going to be able to stabilize and extend your capacity for them, that's the other part of this, is like the idea that an AI can extend your capacity for relationship comes from the idea that if you're putting in reps with an AI companion, you're going to be more likely to be able to have success in your friendship or relationships. And so, although it is fun to ask, quirky, interesting questions to an AI bot and to kind of play with them and see where they go with things. Like I asked it, how much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? And then we had a long definitional argument about what is a woodchuck and does it actually chuck wood? And I think we did actually finally come up with an answer. I'll have to look back. I'll have to look back on my discussions. But ultimately, to be able to extend your capacity for human relationships, I think it takes other human beings. I don't think that you can go into a non-human relationship, practice human relationships, and then find more success in your human relationships. Mostly because what you're going to find in a friend or in a companion that is based on an AI is a lot of encouragement and acceptance of the most difficult and vulnerable parts of you. This is bad because we as human beings really desperately need friction. We need friction in our lives when we make stupid financial decisions so that we don't continue to make those decisions. We need friction in our lives when we, are selfish toward our spouses and they call us out and help us to see the error in the way that we were treating them. We need friction in our lives in the form of children and bosses. And the idea that you can take the friction part out of the relationships and still benefit and extend your capacity and stabilize yourself in relationship, I think is pretty far-fetched and will be very easily disproven with time because of the fruit that's going to come out of the kind of AI companion relationship wave. Next, it talks through like how loneliness is something really severe and needs to be taken really seriously, and that AI can kind of create always available, non-judgmental, scalable baseline social safety net. When people are disconnected from their systems, whether it be like early on in the form of attachment or later on in the form of friendship or divorce or estrangement with children, it's an extremely difficult thing to move through. And there's a lot of grief, a lot of difficulty in moving through something like that. And so I don't want to minimize the impact that has. Now, I have a lot of people who I'm serving as a real relational tool in counseling that are using AI to ask questions. And sometimes there'll be funny moments when, I asked AI that same question and I got a similar answer than what you're giving me, Peter. But here's the thing. When the reflection comes back at you from another human, it really does mean something different on an emotional, relational, and spiritual level than it would coming from an AI. And I see it kind of live in session where what I'm saying is connected to our relationship and what the AI said was connected to nothing, or sycophancy, which is a fancy word for telling you everything you want to hear, I think. The Chad then goes into the idea that there are underrated benefits in the area of emotional regulation support. The idea that they can walk away from regular relationships and go into this companionship and get regulated. Regulation comes from people. We have mirror neurons that kind of bounce off people. We have nervous systems that when engaged bounce off people. We have a lot of biology that is tied into emotional regulation, and leaning on something pretend like, I don't know, like video games is going to move you through the emotional regulation, but it's not necessarily going to get you to where you want to go, especially if that's one of your only tools. And playing a game of my AI companion loves me dearly and everybody else is can go away, I think creates a really nasty precedent and a really nasty kind of side effect for the AI companions that will eventually lead to alienation of regular relationship, especially if a dependence is developed on the emotional regulational support, which I think will increase a lot of harm and destructive patterns from this idea of the benefit of emotional regulation. Emotional regulation is not all equal, right? Like, you can regulate your emotions by smoking weed. You can regulate your emotions by drinking. You can regulate your emotions by going to the gym. You can regulate your emotions by journaling. You can regulate your emotions by all sorts of different things, or by eating. You can regulate your emotions by all sorts of different kinds of things, and not all of them are created equal. And so the idea that an AI companion is this above all beneficial emotional regulation support, I think it would actually be placed in a category alongside video games and porn, right? You're kind of combining the two, playing a video game, chatting with a pornographic or a companion, basically. And so there's a lot of danger in learning to lean on and engage with an AI companion versus doing the hard work of leaning on and engaging support systems. Now, if you personally are struggling with a lack of support system, that is really difficult. And that's not something to take lightly. Like, you need support for your life and for your day-to-day, but it can get better and you can overcome those things. Humans are incredibly resilient and adaptive and really wonderful when you think about all of the things that humans have accomplished. And now, so this AI companion thing is coming up, and I think it's very, very adequately put into this category of a pornographic video game is what an AI companion really becomes. And it encourages a decrease in friction. It decreases one's emotional support and capacity for regulation by creating an unhealthy dependence on the thing, just like porn and just like video games and just like all of these other kind of negative coping skills or tools. Now, regulation is important and support is important, but these are not necessarily the supports that one needs in one's life. Not that it can't be used as like a chat bot, like a chat GPT, can't be used to address, stress or have conversations about certain topics that are really important, that it wouldn't be able to say like, hey, help me install this sink that's on, this new vanity that I'm installing, or help me know how to line up these lights, this light fixture. For that, and leaning on it for physical, like doing some of those tasks, I think is helpful and can be helpful, but not necessarily in this AI companion, right? Which is a little bit different than the AI chatbot idea. The next argument that it goes over is practice and skill building. Basically, the idea that AI is like a language partner, I'm quoting now, or simulation gym than a substitute for real relationships. I think we already kind of spoke to this, where the power of a person being in front of you, the power of grieving with someone, the power of the mirror neurons and the calming the nervous system and updating a relational wound from the past, from an attachment standpoint, is not necessarily going to be able to access through an AI companion or even an AI therapist or an AI chatbot. It's just not, it's not the same. One of the biggest, most beneficial things in all of counseling is the relationship that you extend to the other person. And that relationship is flawed. It has quirks. I make a sarcastic comment every once in a while as a therapist, or make a joke, or make my client laugh, or we dive deep into likes and dislikes, and I have a context for the way that I'm responding to them because it builds over time. And so the more that I know them, the more that I'm able to reflect them, the more that I'm able to kind of engage and be beneficial to them. Now, could you see an AI companion doing that, or even an AI therapist, which again would be a different category? You could see someone trying to use that, but taking away the biology, I do believe, is a very tenuous thing. We should be very kind of guarded against that. Not because I like my job and I want to keep my job, but mostly because I think we're going to find a lack of benefit long-term, or just a very truncated version of the benefit that you can get from sitting with a real person, bouncing your real self, your real ideas, all of the things that are going on into this other person, and then that relationship kind of inspiring and changing people. And I get to see it change people, which is really fun. I was recently working with somebody that has changed a lot over the years, and we had a really fun conversation recently because they are really working diligently, and it was so exciting to see where they had come from. And I can have all of this context seeing them over a period of time, that I get to really know who they are and how they tick, and accept them when they're having really, really rough times, accept them when they're having really, really good times, and kind of help them to weather the in-between. And so those relationship parts are really, really important when it comes to the actual counseling, practice, skill building, all of those things. Now, could a skilled therapist, use AI to build skills and to practice? Yes. With someone who wants to work really diligently. And that's a really big thing that is negative here, and probably we'll switch topics or sides now, is that could a skilled therapist use AI to engage their clients outside of the office for practice and skill building? Yes, but not as an AI companion that is sexual in nature at all, because the sexual version of the AI companion is going to hijack a lot of the benefits that you might get from a relationship. I don't know if you are aware, but sexual relationships in professional settings, whether it be pastoral or counseling or psychiatric or medical, are, illegal some places and extremely unethical everywhere. And so obviously, if you're just talking about AI therapist and using it as a skill building tool, you could definitely make that argument for people who want to do the work. And that's what I was going to get it back to, was that doing the work is the thing that leads to benefit. It's not necessarily knowing the right information, but instead it's really doing the work. I give information to people at times that is good information that then is never worked on. And an AI companion or even an AI therapist is going to, have that same kind of dynamic where they can give good information possibly, but what does the work look like? What does it look like for that person to fail and then be encouraged to move forward, or to try something different, or try something new, or to be in relationship that then encourages commitment and recommitment and hard work? The third argument, really quick, is that human relationships are real, but they're inconsistent, and the AI companions can be a stable, consistent interaction person. I think that this falls super flat, because the idea of dependence is actually one of the deep like depending on this form of emotional regulation or connection. One of the deepest kind of flaws in the AI companion model or idea is that it's going to lead to a dependency. And in that dependency, there's no personal growth. We see that a lot in codependent relationships where they tend to like kind of stall out their growth because they're stuck in a cycle where both of them are kind of triggering. The codependent is triggering the person that's, you know, having a problem, and then that cycle just kind of continues to play out in their lives. And that's a big deal. And when it continues, and it continues kind of unhindered, then that cycle is super destructive to all parties and the children and the whole system, and actually has some like resonating impacts later on through the generations. And so you're creating dependency by being consistent. There's a reason that I see my clients once a week or every other week or monthly. And part of that is one of my jobs is to not create a dependency on myself. And again, we're kind of talking more about like the therapy version of an AI companion, not like an AI companion relationship bot kind of a thing. Maybe we'll have to kind of jump into a conversation around more of that style of AI companion in the future. But there's just a lot of misses when it comes to a companion that is encouraging to you, that is, frictionless, that provides positive feedback when it really shouldn't be providing positive feedback, and creating dependency. And if we kind of look at the other argument, the steel man against AI companions, really what we're going to find is real relationships do require friction. I'm quoting: misunderstanding, repair, compromise, waiting, and occasional disappointments. Those costs are not bugs. They're part of what makes relationships real and growth producing. And a well-designed AI companion removes much of that friction. When it comes to marriage, right, if we were to apply that to like an AI companion replacing a marriage, like I said earlier, the friction that exists within our marriages is really helpful and really good for us, even though it is really hard and really is not fun. You, not only for yourself, but also for your kids, you want them to grow up to be real. You want them to grow up to be successful. You want them to grow up to build an independent, healthy lifestyle. An AI companion removes the independent, removes the healthy out of the lifestyle because of its frictionless nature, and because it has the potential to provide a lot of feedback that would actually push people away from normal, healthy relationships. I think about like applying this to yourself, right? Like we as a culture are very independent. We're very like self-focused. So how does engaging in an AI companion affect me is one of the questions, right? And that's a fine line of thinking. However, it's a bit skewed. It's a bit narrow in its focus, right? What about how does AI companion, AI therapist, AI friend affect culture? How does it affect relationships outside of the online space? How does it affect people who would like marriage? And for an individual considering getting an AI companion or flirting with that, I would warn them off to say, flirting with this line is not going to be beneficial to you. It's kind of like taking up pornography or another addiction. It's mostly empty, mostly barren of the connection that you're truly seeking. And long term, for both you, for your future spouse, for your future children, for your parents, for your friends, will actually have destructive patterns kind of seeded into your relationships as you move forward pursuing this kind of AI world. So I don't think that the question is necessarily, can I handle it or can I mitigate the impact that an AI companion or friend or therapist would have on me? Instead, I think the conversation is, can I recognize the destructive power that it has, not only on myself, but also on a future spouse that I might engage with, just like pornography or, lots of sexual relationships outside of the confines of a committed relationship are destructive to people. When they eventually get into those relationships, it creates a lot of heartache, a lot of difficulty, a lot of work, a lot of struggle. The same goes for this AI companion. You are now degrading yourself or lowering yourself or making yourself someone with the character and the values that is willing to engage in this evil thing. Oh, well, is it evil? This really detrimental thing for kind of the cheap thrill of being engaged with it, or because you're lonely, or because you don't have support, or you're struggling to regulate. But engaging in it this way is kind of like coping with any of those things in another really self-destructive pattern, like alcoholism or marijuana use or et cetera, et cetera. So not only for you, but also for your future spouse, also for your future children, also for your parents, also for your support system, like all of the relationships around you, if you are able to avoid the pitfall of the ease and frictionless nature of an AI companionship or relationship or engaging in stuff like that, you are going to set yourself up both character and values and foundation wise to lean on other healthier things that then will lead to a healthy foundation that you can then join with another person. And so those are some of my thoughts on this idea of AI companions, AI relationships, AI therapists. I hope it was helpful. I hope that maybe it'll spark some thoughts in you. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to send them over. We have an email at marriageisthebest@yahoo.com. We're still looking for some people to go on and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. You can throw it on Spotify. You can join us on or subscribe to the YouTube channel that goes out. The podcast goes out on a YouTube channel, so that is always helpful too. And yeah, I think that's it. This is the end.
And I got all I need.